Hi, I'm attorney Renee Osipov with Chelle Law, and we assist nurse practitioners with employment contract issues. Today, I'm addressing the question of what business expenses should a nurse practitioner be reimbursed for. So these can kind of vary. It depends on where you are, what your specialty is, and what kind of care you're providing. But they all should be outlined in your employment agreement. So I'm going to kind of start with the most common ones and kind of work my way down from there. So starting with number one, your continuing education. So you have to continue your education in order to renew your license and to practice. So that's definitely, I would say, the number one thing that employers normally reimburse for. It can look a couple of different ways, but I would say 90% of the time of the agreements that I see, you are given some type of continuing education allowance where there's a max that they'll reimburse. And that's normally anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 annually. This would include going to any type of conferences or meetings, and if travel is involved in that, normally that continuing education allowance does account for travel expenses. So I would say that's the first one. You also want to look, I don't know if it technically be called reimbursement, but if they're reimbursing you for your continuing education, your employer should also be offering you PTO time specifically for your continuing education. Otherwise, you're using your own PTO from your vacation days, and that's not something that you want to be giving. You need this, continuing education in order to practice. So therefore, you should be receiving anywhere from 2 to 5 days of PTO time to take those continuing education. The next thing I would probably say is your DEA license. Sometimes you have to have them in multiple states. If you're on the East Coast, I see that come up a lot. Or even in one state, you have to register your DEA license, and it's really expensive. It's normally over $800. So that's definitely a big expense that you do not need to be paying for. Your employer should definitely be reimbursing you for that. And then also, your initial DEA license, but also any renewals. You want to make sure that you have that language in your employment contract. Going down the list, probably the next most common reimbursement is your license. Obviously, you have to have a license in order to practice and provide services for your employer, so therefore they should be providing that. Also, professional dues for professional organizations, common nationally known organizations or like a local chapter. Normally, this also can be capped at a certain amount. But your employer should be reimbursing you for that. Again, it's probably going to help you with your continuing your education, networking, best practices, all that stuff. It's helpful to everyone, and so they should be reimbursing you for those expenses. Depending on if you are moving to a new location to become an employee, you may get relocation expenses reimbursed. And this is kind of structured a couple of different ways. Sometimes they will directly reimburse you. You'll provide them with receipts of your moving expenses. Sometimes your employer will pay the companies directly. So you'll have to get approval, and then they will communicate with your moving company and pay them directly. And then other times, it's actually structured like a bonus. So they'll just give you, around like $10,000 up front. Although if it's structured as a bonus and you receive those funds, it's taxed as income. So you just want to be aware of that you're not going to receive that full amount because taxes will be taken out of it. And then also, for sure with the relocation expenses, but sometimes you have to be careful in an employment contract. There are provisions in there that if your employer is providing these reimbursements for these expenses, if you terminate your agreement with them within a specific period of time, you may have to pay back a portion, if not all of these expenses. Now, I'd say it's pretty rare for your continuing education and licensing and dues. It's very common with relocation expenses, though. But I have seen in a contract before that you were required to pay back all of the reimbursements. if you left within a specific period of time. So you want to make sure you're definitely reading that carefully. And then lastly, I would say probably the most rare that I've seen, but I have seen them in employment agreements before, cell phone reimbursement. So if you're using a cell phone or they're providing a cell phone to you to use when you're providing your services, or, travel. So if you have to travel, sometimes they'll give you like sort of mileage reimbursement or maintenance for your vehicle, things like that. So those are kind of rare and kind of specific to, someone who's going to be traveling a lot. But other than that, just to kind of recap, for sure, continuing education, license, dues, fees, DEA license, and relocation expenses. Those are going to be the basic categories of what you should get reimbursement for. If you'd like any further education or just information, you can check out our website at Chelle Law, CHELLE law.com. We have more videos on there addressing other employment contract issues, and our contact information is on there as well. Thanks.